That's where we're keeping our focus this morning, avoiding electoral violence, which has been perpetrated by and large in elections that we've witnessed in the past. And just to have a heads-on and understanding of where this is taking us next, we've been joined from our Abuja studios by Mrs. Baiyewu. She's the co-convener, Civil Society Joint Action Committee. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on Sunrise Daily this morning. You have been, by and large, watching the scenarios as they play out. You've been watching how elections have been carried out, how election results have been announced, how the whole process have been. What is your assessment when it comes to what you say? More than 20 states may experience violence in 2019?
That's correct. More than 20 states may experience violence in 2019, and for a variety of reasons. The first is the context in which the elections are holding in Nigeria. We've had a spur of new conflicts, and some of the old conflicts have become even deeper across the country. When you think of Rivers State, you think of the Northeast, the Middle Belt, you think of the crisis ongoing in Zamfara State, you think of the results of the primaries, and you think of inflammatory statements that have been made and have incited people. And you think of the win all or lose all attitudes of the political parties. You think of the contravention of the Electoral Act by the parties with regards to their primaries. And we have a perfect recipe for violent elections.
In your view, do you feel that the security apparatus, especially that has to do with the police force, the Nigerian police force, is dormant, or are they actually doing something to try to see that they contain this level of violence, because we cannot have at least 20 states to be engulfed in one form of violence or the other come 2019?
The question to ask is, pre-election, have our security forces been able to contain the violence in the states? That answer would lead to then the added pressure of the electoral season. If they've not been able to contain it as at now, and they do not have any plans beyond what they currently implement in the various states, no, they may not be able to contain it effectively. More importantly, our historical treatment of electoral violence by security forces has only ended in impunity for most of the perpetrators. And so at this point, I can't say we should be very hopeful.
How did you come about this 20? By what means did you gather your data to come to that conclusion that 20 states are likely to see violence in 2019?
So the Joint Action Committee had analyzed all of the states in the country, and we had found that in every geopolitical zone, as you know, there are ongoing conflicts, and there are also the dynamics of the political parties and of the polity. For example, take Rivers State, that speaks for itself. Akwa Ibom speaks for itself. Bayelsa speaks for itself, Cross Rivers. Go to the Northeast, you've got Borno. Now, Borno will not be so much of the political violence, but also the added dynamic of ISWAP trying to entrench its relevance in this season. You've got the North Central. Kaduna has been on the boil for months uncontained. You've got Kano and its own dynamics. You've got Zamfara. You've got Sokoto more recently. You've got the Middle Belt and the ongoing crisis of the farmer-herdsman dynamics, which has added religious coloration to it, which would also play out in the electoral season. You've also got the defections from parties as well in all of the states. So when you make up the combination of the states, you understand in the context in which they are in right now, they're very likely to have electoral violence, except something is urgently done.
Your organization talks about one violent incident per week. Isn't that an exaggeration?
One violent incident per week?
In each of these states?
We have been monitoring violent deaths across the country from May this year. And every week, we have not had a violence-free week this year in Nigeria. The lowest number that we have recorded was 75 deaths in 2 weeks. the IS 209 deaths, and that was in the early weeks of November, then the figures are going up. So this is not an exaggeration. These are documented facts.
In your monitoring, were you working with the security agencies to ensure you get the proper data and you go into the nooks and crannies in this your monitoring exercise?
Now, in the monitoring, working with security agents, this is a very conservative monitoring. So the figures that in reality would be higher. These are the figures accurately reported and disseminated by the media and by security forces.
To what extent, in your view, has the insurgency in the northeast of Nigeria affected those numbers that you have reeled out?
Well, the insurgency has played a large part in the numbers because, for example, the numbers I read out of the 209, you would have 121 soldiers in that figure. And so, yes, the insurgency has had an impact, but by and large, the Middle Belt crisis would actually record the higher figure for this year and not the Northeast.